going further, obviously, we're going to be deep spoilers. For
Spoilers!
The series,
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast, with your hosts, Connor O'Neill and Matthew Hughes.
What's up, everybody? Hello. Speaking English. Speaking English. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? How's life?
I'm good. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. That's what I was trying to say. I got it.
You tried.
You did it.
Third time's a charm. Second time? Whatever.
But yeah, here we are. We're recording another Wednesday. Hope everyone's having a nice Wednesday or whatever.
We're actually recording on a Wednesday,
for you guys.
which is wild.
Yeah, that's true. Comment down below. What are you guys up to? What did you do today? Did you work? Chill? Sleep? Nap? Sick?
Read a book?
Sick?
Video
Feel
game?
better?
What'd you do?
But yeah, today, this is actually a quick turnaround for us. We'll be discussing the Daredevil Born Again series. Not even a day after.
Less than 24 hours. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is very quick for us. Other than we have done movie episodes on the same night.
That is true. Yeah. Watch the movie and then boom.
A TV show, this is pretty quick. Usually we are quite rushy.
Agreed. Usually like 2 days before.
One of us is like, oh, I'm not done. And usually we would record this, maybe the Monday?
The Monday before the Wednesday.
For the Wednesday, yeah.
It was a full week in advance for us, which is
good
wild.
on us.
Good on us. We're killing it.
Good on us. We deserve a nice pat on our backs.
Who thought us recording in different rooms, in different places, would be this beneficial, apparently.
Sometimes, it helps you get your shit together.
Exactly. Speaking of which, if you are listening to this and not watching it, you may we're not in our same Nerdy Misfit studio space. That's what I'm gonna call it because we're professionals. We are in different places, and so the audio might not be 100% of what it usually is. Bear with us. If you listened to last week's episode, I was a little echoey. I am hoping that does not happen again. I've played around with my audio settings, just switched out a cord, the whole shebang. So fingers crossed. And if it is, I am terribly sorry, guys. I am trying my best here.
We're working with USB microphones as opposed to our usual
Rodecaster
XLR. Yeah, our nice setup that we got. Makes you miss it though.
Honestly, it does.
We appreciate it.
But yeah, we digress.
But yeah, so if there's any audio issues, please forgive us. Bear with us, as it'll only be for the month of April.
Yes.
Only our April episodes.
Only the April episodes. Ironic enough, it's a month that has many episodes, but it's fine.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it turned out that way, but
that's all right.
It is what it is.
But yes, Daredevil Born Again. What a wild
release
ride.
Date, March 4th. It was 9 episodes, and it was on Disney Plus, not Netflix, because this is now a proper... Did we call it a proper Marvel title, even though it was a Marvel title?
It's under the Disney Marvel umbrella now, so that's how we should phrase it.
It's under the Disney Marvel umbrella now.
Yes.
Is that good? Is that bad? We'll dive in.
Exactly. So
I guess first off, Matt, what did you think of the show in general? I guess.
In general, I will say, it was kind of this didn't directly affect me, but the fact that they randomly released 2 episodes on the same day, halfway through the show, I know why they did it from like a technical standpoint of like release dates with
a little bit of an oversight on competing with themselves.
Exactly, literally
Disney
though.
Plus, that is.
Yeah. But yeah, without going into too many details, I think the show is a solid like 9.5 out of 10. I think that this show shows the growth and downfall of familiar characters that you've seen before in the Defenders verse of Netflix, with characters that had their own shows, characters that popped up in Daredevil, etc. Characters that we fell in love with watching the Netflix shows. And I think this show does a solid story from point A to point B, while A, leaving the audience wanting more for season 2. B, this show does a good job of like, hey, you watch Netflix shows, you're going to love it. Hey, you didn't watch the Netflix shows? That's okay, because here's the little bit of info you directly need to know now, and here's a bunch of new characters that will help continue the story. I think this show did great of doing both. Like, for the people that have fallen in love with the Daredevil show already in the past through Netflix, and people that are just watching Daredevil for the first time with this TV show.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that they did handle it being its own thing and not needing to rely having to have seen the Netflix series at all.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you have seen the Netflix series, I do think that
It's even more enjoyable.
I think certain scenes will impact you a lot more, and you would notice a little bit more of the nuances between characters' relationships.
Definitely.
But it was nice that you didn't need to, but also it's still the same.
Yeah.
You know? Like, I thought they handled that very well.
I 100% agree with that.
I think for me, I would also give it a 9 out of 10. The one thing is, it is obviously, especially with the finale, it's clear that this is a multi-season show. This isn't, it's not wrapped up, right?
Yeah.
So, right now, for me, like, obviously, if you consider the entire story, I think the Loki is probably up there still as the best show.
Okay.
But depending on how this show ends, how it wraps up its story, I think it has a very good chance of being the best Marvel Disney Plus show.
It is definitely in my top 3 for sure.
It's on the track.
Yeah,
it's on the track to be the best. I think Loki, I actually wasn't in love with season 1.
Okay.
Like, I wasn't buying into the hype as much as everyone else when it was first came out.
Mm-hmm.
But when you encompass the whole story, it's pretty great.
Yeah, if you encompass Loki season 1
good.
and season 2 together, chef's kiss. It's up there.
Yeah, it's hard to argue. It's very good. And then for other shows, none of them have really blown me away. Ironically, I think Agatha All Along might be one of my favorites.
Really?
I just think that it was so enjoyable, and you didn't have to be so heavily into the MCU.
Okay.
Which in some ways is good.
See, that's how I feel with the Hawkeye
it's nice
show.
It's good, yeah, that's true. It's good that you can just enjoy the show and be like, hey, that was a fun show. If you didn't know it was Marvel related, like, you'd live, you know?
Yeah. That's why, like, Hawkeye's really good.
We covered it.
Yeah. So go check that
covered
episode
Agatha all along, and we were both surprised at how well done it was.
Agreed. I think too, like, another big for the Disney Plus shows is like Moon Knight. Same thing. It's like one-off thing. It's got a good, clear story. If you didn't watch any of the MCU, that's okay.
Yeah, Moon Knight's almost too far that way though, where I feel like, at least with Agatha all along, she does have like those little connections, right? Obviously to Scarlet Witch, and you're like, okay, like, if you're following the whole story of Scarlet Witch with Vision, and we're going to be getting the Vision show, which is kind of going to be that wrap up of this whole
trilogy of shows,
trilogy, if you will. But that, it at least is still impacting or related to things. I think I really want to see Moon Knight in something else, whether, just to have people be like, oh yeah, he is a Marvel, because he feels so not a Marvel character when you're watching Moon Knight.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and like, this is stuff that we're gonna get into a little bit more, and how I think Moon Knight has a chance of appearing in the future of Disney Plus shows. But yeah, Moon Knight is very far off to the side in comparison to the grand scheme, with not really any Easter eggs, really, even to current stuff that's happening in the MCU.
Yeah, to even somewhat relate him, or like movies referencing something about him. Because we'll get into, obviously, the Daredevil show, but one thing within this series was, although we'll never see him, which is kind of a shame, because I think it would make this show incredible, even if it was only for one episode or something, we get reference to Spider-Man.
Yes.
Right? We get reference that he is in New York, and he's doing his friendly neighborhood Spider-Man thing.
Exactly.
Which Kingpin hates.
The man.
And just something like that, right? Like, for Moon Knight would be so nice to just be like, okay, he's there. People are aware of his existence.
Well, even like Skrulls got mentioned in this show as well, just as an offline. So.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, I guess for me, my initial thoughts very similar. I think I would give it a 9, mostly because it's not done. I want to see how it ends. The other thing is, it's tough to put my finger on, but it did feel like there was something that was missing that was in the Netflix Daredevil series, and
Okay.
I can't like really find a word for it. So what I'm gonna call it is feel. It was just missing a certain feel that was in the original Daredevil.
Okay.
You could, I guess, a good way for me to say kind of how I'm feeling is in the Netflix Daredevil show, you really do feel like it could be the real world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as crazy as some of the things with what's going on with the hand is, you do feel like it truly is just this small section of New York, and like he's just doing his best, and he really is this dirt poor lawyer trying to be the good guy in both during the day and at night, like doing his best to clean up his city. And it just feels more like you're there. Where now I don't know if it's because of lighting, I don't know what gives that kind of change of the feel, but it did feel much more of that generic, like, oh, I'm in a superhero world.
Yeah, I will say that
not the real world.
Mm-hmm. This show did have more scenes taking place during the day than I feel like the Netflix Daredevil show had. I think definitely the Netflix Daredevil show was a lot darker in tone, but I think that was also.
I think this one did have some elements of.
It did.
Like it was matching in a lot of ways, but yeah, I see where you're coming from. Like, obviously, just in general, the being a lot more taking place at night or in alleys or in darker places, right?
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense for the story they were telling, where this was more of a Matt Murdock story and less of a Daredevil story.
This was definitely majority Matt Murdock and his combativeness with himself of trusting the system.
Correct.
Right? Like, let the system kind of handle it. But yeah, I don't know if that's the right way to explain it, but yeah, just the feel, there was just that little bit of something that felt like it was missing compared to the Netflix show. Not saying that makes this one bad, just it was missing it. But for the most part, they did a pretty good job of getting a good chunk of similarity to the series in terms of both like the edginess, right? Like they didn't hold back with some of the gore. The fight scenes were pretty good. There was some not great CGI when it came to like the grappling.
Yeah.
And I think budget restraints definitely reduced the amount of cool like parkour scenes.
Okay.
I feel like we got a ton of like Matt Murdock, whether he's in the Daredevil suit or just in his suit and untying like his tie and just running up and going up ladders in New York. Like, we got a lot less of those, if pretty much none, I think, really, for this season in particular.
We did get it. I'd say 2/3 to it. Like after the bank, I think is when he starts like undoing his time more and start doing more outside activities.
But just not as much parkouring.
No.
And that could obviously be because it is more map focused, or it's because it was also a budgetary thing, right? Where trying to save as much money as possible for the bigger moments.
I could see either side, where because of the story that we're told, like in episode 1, where he's sitting down with Wilson Fisk, both of them being like, yeah, we're leaving our old lives behind. Like, you can make the argument that him doing that. I will take the argument a step further is one thing that this show made me want to do is read a Daredevil comic. And I've never read a solo Daredevil comic before. And so I was going through, I have the Marvel app, and I was like, oh, like, what's a good spot? And I was like, oh, this 2015 title is good. And it is Matt Murdock as Daredevil, moved to San Francisco with his new female lawyer friend, who is a character in the show, and him restarting life. And the biggest thing is him trying to have the duality of Matt versus Daredevil, but also him not doing as well as Daredevil because he's unfamiliar with the city. I got that similar feel almost here because he's so used to only being really Daredevil in Hell's Kitchen. Now that he's in a different part of New York, he's not as... Yeah, the environment is a bit different.
It's fair. but yeah, I think overall, we haven't really spoiled anything yet. So going further, obviously, we're going to be deep spoilers. For
Spoilers.
You've been warned, and come back after you're done the show. But yeah, I guess we'll start off with the first episode, which has one of the big shockers, I guess, if you will, of the show. We jump into the series kind of not where we left off, but with characters we all know.
Yeah, your big three.
And we dive in and we're like, oh, okay, this is fun. They're celebrating something. And then we see, we see Point Dexter, also known as Bullseye,
popping up.
Yeah.
And
pop
shooting
up
down.
And I do find it, okay, before we dive, I do find the way they handled Point Dexter, like for Bullseye, was a bit ridiculous in some cases, of him just grabbing anything and being able to just totally yeet someone like off the planet.
Yeah.
So easily. Like, I just feel like, man, it felt so a little bit unnatural in the Netflix series, but regardless, he comes in and right away he offs one of our big mainstays of the series, Matt's best friend,
Foggy Nelson.
Foggy Nelson bites the dust. And obviously there was a lot of debate because there's a story where Foggy's brought to near death.
Yep.
But so much so that even Matt can't hear his heart beating, and he thinks he's dead, and he ends up not being dead. Which, obviously, I've seen a lot of people online. They're always mad that people aren't dead, especially with the whole Robert Downey Jr. coming back, which could be potentially Tony Stark as Dr. Doom, etc. But obviously, what's the one rule in comic books, Matt? What is the one rule in comics?
Only Uncle Ben stays dead.
Exactly. Nobody stays dead except Uncle Ben.
But
that is the golden rule.
The thing, too, is that in this scene, when Foggy is dead, there is a number in the background for a quick second, and that number references a certain comic book issue where a certain character is supposed to be dead, and then turns out not to be dead. So, as your hardcore Easter egg people, that's people who are like, well, that alone, he's not dead. Like, that's the sign that he's not dead, you know?
And I did think that in episode 9, I thought we were working towards seeing him again.
There is,
I'm not gonna lie,
an indirect reference to the person that put the shot out to him, like referencing like, oh, are you sure he's dead kind of thing. But we'll see him in season 2, definitely. I do appreciate the actor that played Foggy and how he hyped up, like going to the press tour. He's like, oh, I'm
like
so
he was
excited.
in the whole show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm back. We're back, baby.
I was like, I appreciate that so much because that's something we didn't expect, right?
No. Everyone thought that it was the cast, that the full cast was back.
Mm-hmm. And they were for like 5 minutes.
This traumatic event obviously causes Karen to dip.
Yep.
And it causes, obviously, Foggy is no more. And in this is like the first big moment that ends up kind of setting up a lot of the rest of the show, which is Matt in his frustration, because the reason Matt wasn't there to save him is he got baited to turn into go Daredevil and go save, the city. And then he's too late to come back to save Foggy because he was basically baited to leave.
Yep.
And when he comes back and he sees Bullseye, he does not hold back. He, as we saw in the finale of the Netflix series, he wanted to kill Kingpin, but he holds back and doesn't end up doing it, and the Kingpin goes to prison.
Yep.
Here, he basically lucks out that he doesn't kill Bullseye. As far as Matt's concerned, he killed him.
Yeah,
that's my belief. Like, I think that Matt does think that, like, okay,
at that current moment,
he didn't. And definitely in the moment he thought he killed him, and it turns out that he manages to live, which is obviously ridiculous. But regardless,
that question doesn't really
Bullseye
get answered.
Bullseye does live, and Matt crosses a line that he has yet to cross. in the original Netflix series, which obviously if you're a new watcher, that you're just like, holy crap, that was crazy. But we know that Matt has a moral code that he doesn't cross. And he gets close, but he hasn't crossed it. And after Foggy's passing, we get the time skip. What is it, a year forward?
Yeah, 1 year, yeah.
And Matt's opened up a new practice, and he's very I'm letting the system do things. I'm gonna fight everything as a lawyer, do the best I can, and he's done. He's done with the Daredevil thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of truly where the show is, right? Where we're starting. We're starting at this point where we're following Matt Murdock, the lawyer, and we're following Wilson Fisk
as mayor,
getting just as elected, getting voted in.
Yeah.
Basically freshly getting voted in as mayor. And that's like this crazy duality of like these characters, right? Because we have both of them doing something, I guess, just not what you'd expect from the character. Matt totally giving up on Daredevil because he's always fought for the city in both ways, like for the little guy as a lawyer, but he's always like, hey, someone's got to be out there because, it's dangerous, blah, blah, blah. Like, can't save everybody, but I can do my part kind of thing.
Yeah, which obviously
he's giving up on that.
Then causes the whole vigilantes thing. Like, if he's gone, then there's got to be other vigilantes, which then is the whole root
People
of
step
Fisk.
In. Yeah. And Wilson Fisk is the Kingpin. He's a crime lord. He's a crime boss. He doesn't make any sense why he would want to be the mayor other than power. And he manages to convince everyone that he just loves the city and he wants to do what's best for the city in his eyes, which is completely different than, I guess, his more selfish nature that we've seen him throughout the original series.
Yeah, there's also an argument to make there, though.
No, go ahead. Yeah, they are. Your
like,
argument.
There's like I don't like this argument personally, but because Fisk, Kingpin is a character we've seen that was in the Daredevil show, all the Netflix shows, but we've also seen him in the Hawkeye show and in the Echo show, where we see him go past that crazy point, and then weird magical powers and Echo calms Kingpin down and almost causes him to accept his trauma, and that's kind of like his first stepping stone on why he's becoming mayor, and that's something they don't really cover in this show.
Yeah,
but that
the
is
reference
good
to
know.
the other shows isn't covered as well. That's a good point. I loved the diner scene.
Chef's kiss.
Thought it was just, it was like there was like so much tension, but also like they're laughing. It was just very, you could like cut the tension with a knife, but it was brilliant. It was so well done.
That scene is even more insane because of how the show ends, and knowing that that diner scene was all them being like, I'm done being Daredevil. That's cool. I'm done being the Kingpin. I'm Wilson Fisk. You're Matt Murdock. La da da da. And then we're
both gonna do what's best for the city,
And then by the end of it, they realize that their other side of them is what they think is best for the city. Basically.
Yeah. It's pretty much what ends up happening in a way. But yeah, going through the show, there are a couple highlight episodes, I'd say. Episode 1, obviously, with the impact of Foggy Nelson's death and seeing the Kingpin elected as mayor. That's like one big thing. I think, is it episode 3 that has White Tiger?
The courtroom scene? Yeah. The courtroom, let me just check my notes. What are others? The intensity of the courtroom, yes.
Yeah.
And that's how the end of the White Tiger story.
Big ep. That's a big ep. And then the last 2 episodes, I'd say.
Okay.
I'd say that those are all like the major eps. The rest did feel like there were some little bit of like lull moments where we're kind of just a little bit more like adding some character development / depth to certain characters. We had the Muse show up as a kind of like a mini.
Yeah, what did you think of the Muse?
I didn't care for it. I mean, one thing I did like was that, hey, crime's not gonna stop.
Mm-hmm.
So it is good to have like a more, what we're gonna call him, a C-list, B-list villain.
Yeah.
Kind of show up to kind of just fill that like there's still bad people doing bad things, right?
Yeah.
So I did like that, but it was in my opinion. Like, I didn't care for it as much. It could have been literally anyone, right? Like, that was just doing not so good things. They went full Muse, like, psychopath crazy, I guess, because it's more dramatic, more eye-catching.
I did
right?
think
Like,
that Muse was going to be the big villain. Like, the way they were kind of hyping him up by the end of episode 6 by, like, kidnapping White Tiger's niece, that whole fight that we seen, I was like, oh, Muse might end up actually being the big villain. He was showed in the trailers a little bit. And then what ends up happening with Muse, it wasn't anticlimactic. Obviously, it was important for the story. But for me, I was like, oh, okay, this is the end of Muse, and we're just going to move on now, I guess? Like,
yeah.
It was kind of weird, in my opinion. That's why I didn't want to give the show a 10, because it was a great setup, great B-list, C-list, but it wasn't necessarily a bad thing. It just felt like, here's the story, boom, okay, we're done. Okay, we're going to jump back to the A-plot now. With very little repercussion, almost. I don't know.
I feel like the repercussion was the increase in strain on Matt's relationship with his girlfriend.
Yeah, there was
I feel
that.
like that was like the more impactful part that the Muse played, other than obviously who's it was White Tiger's niece that he almost kills.
Yeah.
And then obviously we end up learning that Muse has been visiting
Heather Glenn.
And then Heather's all like, oh, there were 2 psychopaths in my, like, you know, like, Daredevil's just as bad. And we have, like, the classic argument of the hero where someone doesn't know they're their hero and him trying to argue for, like, well, Daredevil's trying to do good. And she's like, no, he's just as
saved
bad.
myself. Yeah.
Yeah, I killed him. I saved him. And it's like, no, you didn't. Like, yeah, you shot him, but he was already done.
Yeah.
He was done.
Exactly.
You kind of, if we're being honest, she kind of shot the equivalent of kicking someone when they're down. Like, there was no reason to shoot him at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously,
just
understanding her adrenaline and that she was just attacked, obviously understandable.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, she was no longer in danger is what I'm trying to say. Not that she wouldn't want that someone in that situation wouldn't want to kill someone. I feel like that's, I'm sure, justifiable. But that kind of begins that strain, right, where her and Matt are not seeing eye to eye at all on that topic.
Yeah.
And then obviously as we progress through the show, you see she's more siding with Fisk on a lot of things, and Matt's, to be fair, Matt's not giving many good reasons to not like Fisk. He's always just like so blasé about it. Like,
You just need to trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fisk is bad. Anything Fisk does is bad. Don't trust him. And it's like, okay, well, maybe give her some sort of reasons, bro. Like, what the heck?
Exactly.
But I didn't love Heather Glenn. She was definitely not my favorite character. Like, I was kind of like, especially at the end, but obviously we see that she gets brought onto Fisk's team, and I'm like, okay, like, we're supposed to believe that she's in this relationship with Matt, and she obviously should trust Matt. And she's just like, yeah, no, I'm just going to go against everything he says. For what reason, though?
Well, that's what I mean. Like, at the end, we could be like, oh, maybe she's just jealous because after he wakes up, he says Karen's name and not Heather, kind of thing. So then she, like, storms off.
I don't know.
But that's for story
She seems more
purposes,
intelligent than that kind of character, though. Right? Because she is like a psychologist or a therapist or whatever.
Something like that. You think she would understand why her blind boyfriend has bruises when he's just like, oh, I tripped. And she's like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, not even that. Even like your example, the hospital thing. Man just took a bullet and is on like a crap ton of painkillers. Yeah, he said the wrong girl's name. I don't think that that's that big of a deal.
Exactly. But I digress. Speaking of that character, Karen Page obviously eventually comes back. But more importantly, Frank Castle showing up. his scenes
in a couple episodes.
The first scene we see him back when he's got the longer hair and he's like kind of not quite there. Top tier, great. And then obviously the other moment that we really see him is like when Matt, after he gets shot, leaves the hospital, comes home, and Frank's already there waiting in his apartment. It was just a great scene. Like both like any scene with
finale
Frank
episode
Castle,
with Frank was great.
Yeah, and obviously it set up his special that he's getting on Disney Plus as well.
Which John Bernthal has described as like it's going to be a proper. He wouldn't come back unless they were doing the Punisher right. So
exactly.
I do love that when he was originally casted for the Punisher, he knew nothing about this character.
Yeah.
And he has just grown to love the character and respect the character, and just it's always nice to see like an actor who truly loves one of the characters they're playing, like so much so that they're like, I ain't coming back unless you're doing that character right.
Exactly.
So definitely enjoyed the first episode where he's back in this season. Did feel more like Easter eggy, like fun, like more like a fun surprise. Like here's what Frank's been up to. But the finale.
Yeah, I didn't fully expect him to come back. In all honesty, like I wasn't.
Yeah, the finale.
I didn't
was
see
intense.
that coming. Even Karen, like I didn't think I didn't think she was coming back. But as soon as he woke up from the hospital and said her name, I'm like, oh, there's a chance she might come back because that's for the audience to be like, oh yeah, Karen. And then next, 20 minutes later, who drives up in the middle of a blackout randomly.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the White Tiger story arc?
Yeah, so the White Tiger story arc is, I'd say, mostly episode 2 and 3. White Tiger is a B-list, arguably a C-list character in the comics that if you knew the White Tiger, I'd say the average person might know it, A, as a female character, B, probably from the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show where it was like Iron Fist, Luke Cage, White Tiger, and Spider-Man and Nova, I think was the team. It was like one of the Drake Bell TV shows.
Yeah, I've seen it. That's actually where I first got introduced to Iron Fist.
There you go. See, Iron Fist, White Tiger, like the... it's an interesting character. It's not revealed... Like, there's a couple throwaway lines that kind of tells you a little bit about his powers, I guess, where he has a White Tiger amulet that gives him abilities. There's 3 types of amulets. I actually want to deep dive a little bit last night because I was talking to a friend of mine, and they're like, oh, does it connect to Black Panther? It does not. It's like the Sons of the Tiger. There's like some Chinese old martial arts. I would say it's more connected to Iron Fist style, like martial arts background. Nothing to do with Black Panther or Wakanda or anything like that. Costume is pretty comic book accurate. Obviously, he ends up getting shot by the Punisher, in quotations. Obviously, the audience were like, that can't be the Punisher. That would make no sense. And then, obviously, throughout the story, we reveal it's not. Has to do with the subplot of the Vigilante Task Force and all them paying homage, in quotations, to Punisher, being like, oh, we won't back down. We're all crazy, kind of thing. Yeah. And then his niece is in it. You see her being like, I want his stuff. Like, I want my uncle's stuff. And in the comics and in that Ultimate Spider-Man TV show, that's who the White Tiger is. So there's a potential of seeing her in the future, but that will be something we can discuss a little bit in the future of this episode. Yeah, I think the courtroom scene with like understanding White Tiger and him getting acquitted and stuff, and then getting shot in the face, is a direct reference to pretty much exactly what happens in the comics. He is in court for a murder, and then gets acquitted. He's perfectly fine, and then goes out later that day, gets shot. I will say in my notes here, because I find it funny, I have, seeing this episode and the intensity of a courtroom reminds me of how She-Hulk had so much potential. Where I'm like, yeah, I know She-Hulk was obviously a more comedic show, but this courtroom scene was just really well written, really well shot, left you on the edge of your seat, essentially.
Yeah, it was a very, like, you could feel the mood, right? Like,
exactly.
And, like, all the cops that are there, you can feel how corrupt it was. You can feel everything. Like, you were angry because you know it's corrupt. You feel a lot of emotions.
Exactly. Another big episode that is not a big episode. People can call it a bottle episode, but it's just a standalone episode. And it's probably my favorite episode is the bank heist. episode 5 called With Interest, where basically the whole episode just takes place in a bank, and it's a group of Irishmen on St. Paddy's Day trying to rob the bank. And we get introduced to one of my favorite characters in the MCU, Ms. Marvel's dad. And just, I forgot how funny he was. His lines were great. And honestly, this episode just, I think, is essential, because this is almost not a tipping point for Matt going back to Daredevil, but you see him struggle, like even we see him struggle in the episode before, when Frank Castle comes back. You see him struggle even a little bit more, being like, Matt Murdock would just leave, but Daredevil wouldn't. And then he realized that he's like, oh, like, this isn't about me. This is about the city more than anything, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like that Funko Pops.
The bank episode was fun.
Yeah.
Definitely a cameo, a good way of handling a cameo of the character. One, it wasn't the main character, right? It wasn't Ms. Marvel. It was her dad. Just at his regular job, and then just like the cute, like, humble brag about like the superhero in his neck of the woods. Like, it was really cute. And just, man, that actor is just fantastic comedic timing.
Exactly.
Like, he's great. So I thought, it was really nice to see him. And just another nice little, like, something like we mentioned about when it came to like Moon Knight, right? Like, something as simple as that to just feel like it's connected, right? Like,
exactly.
This is what another way of helping Daredevil just feel connected to the MCU as a whole.
I think they did great with that, to be honest.
Moving on, I guess one thing we haven't quite touched on, which before we get into like the final 2-episode arc, if you will, which is the end, is the strained relationship of the Fisks.
Oh, yeah, I didn't like this at the beginning of this show, I'm gonna be honest with you. Like, when... It
did feel very off, because Vanessa never seemed like she was
connected,
very into the whole crime side of things. She was like, I guess, turned the blind eye. That's always how I felt about it in the Netflix show. She was always like, like, this is what you do, that, like, you do you, but
keep me out of it.
I'm in love with you in spite of that. Like, ignoring that, right? Where obviously, like, with Wilson Fisk, I guess, initially going to prison, she took over operations and I guess just liked the power. Is that, I am assuming that that's kind of like what we're supposed to get the vibe as. And when Wilson is released and he comes back in and he's going through this, not redemption arc, but like, finding himself, if you will, and realizing he wants to become the mayor, he's not the same person that she fell in love with initially.
No.
And so we learned that there was some infidelity on her part.
Adam.
During Wilson Fisk's time in prison or what have you.
Yeah.
And we learned that she really isn't the biggest fan of Wilson Fisk, 1, running for mayor, 2, being the mayor, and just his focus as mayor. Because initially, it really does feel like as him as mayor, he really is just focusing on making New York a better place.
Yeah.
While she's still running the whole crime syndicate. Right? Like, for all intents and purposes, she is the kingpin at this point.
Mm-hmm.
If you will. She's making sure
she steps into that
gangs
role.
are following rules, and we see like gangs follow, like certain gang leaders kind of trying to test the waters and being like, oh, you don't have a good hold on things, and then getting that shit back together. They end up going to see Heather for counsel for their marriage,
which was kind of lame.
And in their own effed up way, they end up being together again. I did say one of the scenes that was crazy for me during this little inner story arc throughout the season was when the one gang leader gives her the option of like, I'll take out Fisk or whatever, and she's like, do it. And you see Wilson Fisk just in the restaurant by himself eating, and you really think he's about to get like just shot in the back, and like it's now gonna be the Vanessa show.
Yep.
And then he just gets absolutely clapped by Wilson Fisk's like security guard or whatever.
His name that guy's name in the comic is called Bullet. His name is Buck Cashman. He is a crazy assassin in the comics.
And he just wrecks him, and you're just like, oh.
You're like, oh, okay.
And, but you know that like Fisk was prepared. Like he kind of knew like.
Yeah.
That's where his relationship is right now, that Vanessa's like willing to have him killed. Maybe not exactly at her own hand, but her benefiting from him dying.
Exactly. Her being able to take it over.
Eventually we get to the point where Wilson Fisk shows that he imprisoned what's his face, the guy that
Adam
Vanessa cheated with, and then Vanessa ends up killing him, and then that's how they that's like the true reconciliation.
Just so messed up.
Like, yep. Yeah, they're like, yeah, this was effed up, but now he's like, I couldn't, I locked him up, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, and then she kills him, which is almost like her way of being like, it's done, we don't have to worry about it. And it's like, you're just kind of like, okay. And you truly know that they're reconciled when the finale, you see them in front of the painting, which is the original painting that Wilson Fisk purchased when they first met.
Yep.
And they're eating dinner, and that's the backdrop is that painting. You're like, okay, they're on the same page now. And obviously throughout, the reason that obviously makes sense is because Wilson Fisk slowly becomes more and more just the Kingpin.
Exactly.
Throughout the story. He ends up just becoming the Kingpin, who's also the mayor, which is not a very good combo for New York.
Especially not at the end of the season. Another thing
so you weren't a big fan of that then, the overall kind of Fisk's
not really. Like episode 2, I have a note that literally says, I don't care about the Fisk mirrors as of right now in this episode, though I have a feeling it'll be a recurring subject throughout the show. It did grow on me.
Yeah.
But I was just, I don't know, like when that current moment, it felt like we had like 3 or 4 plots going on at the same time, and that one was just so low for me where I was like, meh, it will resolve itself by the end.
I think the interesting thing for me was that how they've switched. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, we have Wilson Fisk, who was like this truly just evil man, and then him trying to turn things around, and her being a genuinely pretty good person, and turning the table to like being like, I'm running this crime, basically I'm a crime lord.
Yeah. And
then her not liking Wilson Fisk because he's not that same person.
Yeah, exactly.
I thought it was interesting, but yeah, I could definitely see where you're like, there are a few different things going on. I think it was definitely more to show like, one, that, Wilson Fisk also has regular issues like anybody else. Mm-hmm. I think that's one thing, trying to make him more human to everyone. And then I think the other thing was just showing the struggles, like Matt's going through his struggles, and Wilson Fisk, behind the scenes is also struggling with his own issues.
Yeah, I have that a lot in my notes, where the parallels of Matt and Fisk leaving their old life behind of being Daredevil and Kingpin, and then them both almost parallel at the same time falling back into those moments and those times. Like, we see Matt fall back into Daredevil at the same rate that Fisk falls back to being that crazy Kingpin, right? And we see it.
Yeah, like, that's a good example, because we see what would be the first thing where we really see the Kingpin kind of. We see when he beats the crap out of the guy in his locked up prison. The lad that Vanessa cheated on Wilson Fisk with, when we see Fisk just like go to fisticuffs with him, just to beat the crap out of him. I'd say that's the first time where we're like, okay, he's cracking. Like, he's not this, I'm going to be the mayor for New York City.
Yeah, so there's that note for Fisk. And then at the end of episode 2, when the dirty cops show up and Matt is getting White Tiger to run away, and then Matt gets his like ass handed to him, and then Matt switches it and starts beating the crap out of the cops.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like, from that moment on, Matt's kind of like, I shouldn't have done that. Then obviously we see White Tiger killed, and then Matt's like, nope, I gotta handle this. but there's people that know Matt's Daredevil, like the PI for his firm, who's like knows. He's like, don't do it, Matt. He's kind of like that voice of, I don't want to say reason, but like he's kind of filling that original Foggy Nelson role. Remember how like Foggy in the Netflix series was always like
the helper.
Don't do it, Matt. Like, you don't need to do it. You don't need to do this. Like, obviously, by the end, Foggy Nelson understands. He's like, you are who you are, Matt. Like, it's... I never liked how at bumping heads they were about him being Daredevil and stuff. Mm-hmm. But obviously, at the end, like, both him, like, Foggy and Karen are like, okay, like, this is Matt. Like, we can't be Matt's friend without also just accepting he's Daredevil. Like, he's gonna be Daredevil.
Yeah, and I think...
But this PI kind of plays that role of that original Foggy of like, don't do it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to do it.
And we see the full tipping point for Matt is when Muse kidnaps White Tiger's niece, and the exact moment is when he's holding the old Daredevil horn, and he just goes, fuck it, and just drops the horn, and then that's the full tipping point, and that's the exact same episode where Fisk introduces the task force for vigilantes, right?
Yeah, and then Fisk learns that Daredevil's the one who saved, or he hears that Daredevil's the one who saved her, and then obviously he ends up saving Heather from the Muse, and Wilson Fisk is kind of like...
the vigilante task force.
Well, and he knows who Daredevil is, so you can like kind of feel that he's just raging that Matt's also turning back to being, because that was like, I think for Wilson Fisk, that was like one person where he's like, I don't have to worry about this guy. This guy's like done. He doesn't even care to do it anymore.
Yeah, as soon as he hears that Daredevil's back, it sets a fire under him, you know?
Absolutely.
But it's interesting because it's parallel, because Matt is under the impression that Fisk is the one that sent Bullseye to kill Foggy, so then he goes back to Daredevil to send a message to Fisk, and then Fisk does the vigilante task force to send a message to Daredevil, and they are in this, they're parallel because they're both trying to stop each other without knowing that they're not the people behind of what's happening to begin with. And it's obviously goes back to Vanessa,
which brings us to the finale.
Which brings us to the finale,
right? Where we have Bullseye on the loose. He attempts to kill the Kingpin. Matt blocks it, but just before, we learn that Matt realizes Vanessa is the one who called for the hit on Foggy. Mm-hmm. And then that dives into the finale, where Matt tries to unravel what exactly Foggy learned.
Yep.
And we basically learn that through happenstance, Foggy learns that this, a dock that... it's basically a dock with no jurisdiction in terms of like the government or the state, and basically Vanessa Fisk has been using it to launder money for all of the art and stuff for years.
Yeah.
And obviously she didn't want Foggy to figure that out, which is why she ended up calling the hit. But the scary part is that through being the mayor, Wilson Fisk is trying to like reamp this port and make it even better.
Yeah.
Making it so that they can launder billions of dollars instead of millions of dollars through it without any concern of like it being illegal.
Yeah.
And through that, we also see Wilson Fisk go take advantage of the attempt on his life to close New York City, which I did read was also something that has happened in the comic books by Bullseye, causing the city of New York to go and shut down.
Yep, which is something I'll discuss about in a sec.
And through that, we see Wilson Fisk introduce martial law. We see him starting to blackmail other officials within New York City to get what he wants. Very Kingpin-like, not mayor of the New York City-like. And he ends up getting his whole full initiative for no vigilantes in the state, which also basically puts 8:00 p.m. was the
curfew. Yeah,
the curfew for the citizens of New York. Just a bunch of other very crazy rules, and it's kind of where we're left off, where we're just like, wow, this is scary. This is a scary place right now to be in New York City.
So my question for you then is, what's the future look like?
Well, as we know, we saw the vigilante task force basically goes full wild, crazy. Like, they're already crazy. Like, that one guy is so unhinged. I don't know if he's in the comics. That one cop that Daredevil initially fights, or Matt initially fights when it comes to the white, the one that's basically responsible for trying to get
the leader of the task force,
White Tiger, get White Tiger arrested and stuff. He's like so unhinged. When he put that one guy's hand in oil for just
was really messed up.
Was just a reporter, right? And I was like, what the heck, man? This guy is crazy. I thought, like, and he still is. I still think that Poindexter's crazy, but trying to give him a run for his money.
Yeah.
But on Matt's side of things, while Wilson Fisk, all this stuff's going on, the task force is going after Matt because Matt's in the hospital, and you have Buck, Wilson Fisk's right-hand man, going to assassinate Matt, and fails because Matt hears him. And then all of a sudden, Frank Castle's there in the apartment and is like, "I'm here to save you, Red." I always just love when they're just talking. They're just. Their interactions are great. Obviously, we learned that that's Karen that was
the one that
cause of this reunion, if you will.
Yeah.
And we see them starting to fight the task force. I loved how Matt is fighting with his inner demon of like breaking his cardinal rule, the Batman rule, if you will.
Yeah.
And there's White Tiger's killers right there, and he's being egged on by the Punisher, like, just do it, Red, just like, you know,
give it to it.
And it's cool because in the Netflix series, that's also a common thing that's happening is the Punisher always is egging on Daredevil to be like, you can't do the important stuff. Like, if you do that, they get back up. When I do, they stay down, like that kind of thing. And obviously, similarly, we hear the same idea from Stick, from Elektra, right, throughout the Netflix series as well. Like when Stick's always like, Matt is weak, or like weak-hearted, or whatever he says, something along those lines, where Matt's not willing to kill or do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
And we see them kind of run off and basically learn like that they're gonna need more than just the Punisher, because one, the Punisher ends up getting captured, but they're gonna need an army. And that's kind of where it ends. And that's where it ends. So obviously the whole speculation now goes into what is the army? Who's going to be joining for Netflix, or not Netflix, for Daredevil's season 2? Are we going more Netflix route, or are we getting something new?
I got a whole spiel all about that. Don't you worry.
Well, take it away, Matt. I give you the light.
I'm even going to throw pictures up. There's going to be pictures on the freaking screen if you're watching this on video. So I did a little bit of deep dive after this, because I was like, there could be 2 versions of this army, and one, which is the one that would cost way too much money and definitely I would love to happen, but would definitely not happen. And I have the comic book picture up. It's going to be on the screen here now, and it is a clip of Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, Echo, Misty Knight, Spider-Man, and Moon Knight, all fighting together in Hell's Kitchen in New York City at night. That would be the dream team.
Basically, Defenders plus some extras.
Yeah, Defenders 2.0, essentially. Which would be dope.
Which we know is not going to be the case.
Yeah, well, it's going to cost way too much money. Obviously, having the special effects budget to do both Moon Knight and Iron Fist in the same show is already too much, I think, with wanting to do the special effects of Daredevil alone, right?
For sure.
So that, I could see them doing maybe a B-list team of that. Maybe, like, I could see Echo coming back. She-Hulk could even show up for all we know.
Could potentially even see Moon Knight show up for an episode.
We could, yeah. Him coming back home to whatever. But the other big thing is there's a storyline in the comics that I don't know too much about called Shadowlands, which is basically Hell's Kitchen, New York, goes dark, similar to what happens here. I think you did reference it. I think it does connect to Bullseye, that you said earlier. And what ends up happening in that is Daredevil leaves, and when he comes back, he is the leader of the Hand. And he uses the army of the Hand to take back the city. And to take that point, a step further, I'm going to show a picture right here too, is that one of the leaked photos of Daredevil Season 2, he is rocking the Shadowlands suit. The pitch black suit with the red.
Suit with a red DD.
Yeah. So that is a big thing of like, he's there, he's got the suit. Could he be the leader of the Hand? I think that's more plausible.
I think that this is likely the case. One, probably a lot easier to get access to people to just be random hand soldiers.
Mm-hmm. It's easy. It's different people. We don't have to throw in. But I wouldn't be surprised if even one of those hand soldiers turns out to be Elektra or something. And then this takes it a step further. Is this how we're gonna get Foggy back? If Foggy is quotations dead, is he gonna throw him into the Marvel's Lazarus pit?
The Marvel Lazarus pit.
Exactly. Yeah. That is the big question,
Yeah, or is he already back and we don't know it? Yeah, no.
Is
for
he
sure.
the leader
I think
of the
that
Hand?
This is the more likely story, just due to the leaked pictures from the set.
Exactly.
I feel like this is, or some sort of combination, right? Where maybe in trying to get the Hand, maybe we do see Daredevil bump into an Iron Fist per se, and being like, it's not worth it, don't do it. But he does it anyways. Like, we could see some elements like that for Easter eggs. But it just seems the more plausible thing when you're thinking of him needing an army.
Yeah.
4 or 5 other street superheroes is not going to be the same as, especially if you've seen the Netflix series, as all of the ninjas you can get from the Hand.
Exactly. It'd be cool to see if they just, because this season's called Daredevil Born Again. So if they drop a different title of Daredevil Shadowlands, that just is going to confirm our theory even more,
Suspicions.
right?
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to happen to the Punisher special. I'm pretty sure that's going to come out before Daredevil Season 2, because I'm pretty sure Punisher will be in Season 2. I think it'd be stupid if he wasn't.
I also think that we'll definitely see the Punisher. I think he, at this point, it's so easy to say that not only is Punisher just a very enjoyed character from the comics perspective, but I think it's fair to say that he's grown to be a fan favorite on the TV screen as well.
Definitely. I think John Burchell does amazing for the role.
Oh, he is. When we've talked about castings before, but man, from a looks perspective, he is pretty great for the Punisher.
Agreed. Wrapping up a little bit, we've talked about most of the Easter eggs. I can run through a few that we haven't talked about.
Yep, go ahead.
The biggest difference between this show and the comics is that Muse doesn't have a name in the comics. Like, that, I can't remember what the actual actor, like that character's name is before he puts on the Muse head. That Muse doesn't have a normal name in the comics. He just goes by Muse. So that's like the big difference. Another thing too is that this is from the comics, is that when Muse is outside and those 2 girls come up to him to take a picture and then he uses their blood for the next mural, that is very, very similar to a scene that happens exactly in the comics, just like that. 2 girls come up to talk to him like, oh my gosh, we're such a big fan, and then yikes. The only other big-ish Easter egg we haven't discussed is Swordsman. Your boy Swordsman shows up not once but twice.
He shows up at the gala where he's blackmailed into giving money.
Yep.
And then we see him imprisoned, yeah?
In prison at the very end, yeah. He shows up in episode 6, and then he's in the second last episode as well. He shows up in episode 6 mostly as just a throwaway. Was it the gala? No, because the gala is near the end of the show.
It's somewhere in the similar area. 6-ish is.
Yeah, episode 6. Yeah, I have it right here.
Yeah.
Excessive Force is the episode name. But yeah, I think that's probably the only big Easter egg. But in conclusion, if you've watched the Netflix shows, definitely give this a watch. If you haven't watched the Netflix shows, also give this a watch. This is just a great show. Like from a
great
film
Marvel
standpoint, the storytelling is phenomenal. The shots are great. Something I want to quickly mention is both the use of color, especially in episode 8 when Bullseye is all blue based compared to the shots with Matt is all red. That's great. Just the contrast is phenomenal in that. And then the one last thing I want to mention is the music and the intro. The intro itself tells the story of the show so well, of literally the statue and everything we know falling down and breaking, and then rebuilding to something new. The whole born again concept is literally written into the design of the
very
storytelling.
It was very Game of Thrones-esque.
Yeah.
I found it, but it was a good intro. Yep, I agree. I would say so far 9 out of 10. Maybe season 2 makes this the best MCU show we've gotten. Hopefully,
we'll be there to cover it. Don't you worry.
We're hoping for the we're hoping the MCU to be born again, basically. So hopefully, this is another step in the right direction.
Agreed. But until then, until the next episode of season of Daredevil, until the Punisher, still there's obviously a lot more Marvel stuff coming this year. We got Fantastic Four, we got Thunderbolts, we got Ironheart, we got a couple animated shows of What If, maybe? Oh no, Marvel Zombies, yep. And then we have Eyes of Wakanda, which is another animated show, and then at the very end of this year, we have Wonder Man. So we're only 4 months in, and we have so much more Marvel content to chat about.
Lots of Marvel content.
So yeah, stay tuned for that. Obviously, stay tuned for your anime of the month. Your Lie in April, beautiful anime. Super stoked to talk about that. And then, yeah, there's just action-packed summer coming towards you. We got Star Wars stuff coming up, so stay tuned for that. I'm super pumped. There might be some shorts about that. So stay tuned. Check out our social medias. Yeah. Are you following us on our social medias? Because if you're not, you should. Because we're on a bunch of them. Check in the link tree. And that's where you can find us.
But yeah, drop a comment down below if you liked Daredevil or not. And join the Discord to get involved in the conversation. Other than that, we'll see you guys next Wednesday.
Bye.
Goodbye.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. Don't forget to join the island by dropping a follow. Thank you. And see you next week.